Hey, what's up guys, John here. California just brought forward a major plan to change the lives of 40 million Americans that reside in that state. This is going to change, I believe, the path of America and what many other states are soon going to follow. Whether you live in New York City or Denver, many of these locations and other locations have opted in for a similar housing plan. So if you're a real estate investor, if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, pay very close attention to what is now unfolding inside of the state. Now, I reported on this when it just broke in 2022 that this is the direction it's going.
California just enacted a new law that will likely change housing and real estate values throughout the entire state.
Gavin Newsom has a plan to make housing more affordable. Now it's moving full steam ahead. CBS.com, they reported 2.5 million houses and housing units will need to be built in the next 5 years.
2.5 million new homes need to be added by 2030.
Gavin Newsom, in January last year on CA.gov, reported 2.5 million housing units will be built. Now, they say of those, 1 million will need to be affordable.
1 million of those accessible for lower income families.
Now, 2 weeks ago, I said on this channel, when that big story broke out in LA about all the people that have unfortunately lost their homes, that I believe a lot of that land will get used for affordable housing and Section 8, things like that. What I think is going to happen is I think vulture investors are going to be going out there acquiring this land for pennies on the dollar, and they're going to be able to go out there and build affordable housing units. This is what could possibly happen. And developers are likely going to be incentivized to build these homes because they'll likely get state funding, and they'll probably get grants, they'll get low-income housing tax credits. A lot of this stuff will actually happen. That's my belief. And we'll see if I'm right. It's reported now on MSN.com and a few other websites that this is the direction that the state is considering to move with a lot of that property. Now ask yourself this very big question. How would California build such a thing? And how would it get funded? And what would this mean for everyone? In Venice Beach, California has built housing units for 1.1 million a unit. It's almost hard to even say with a straight face. $1.1 million a unit in Venice Beach. In downtown LA, they're spending between $600,000 and $800,000 a unit for the homeless. So if you're talking about 2.5 million housing units, let's say you're building it at 500 grand a unit, which they're not. If they were, it's $1.25 trillion. Now, the US federal government, through the IRS, they collected across the entire country 330 million Americans, over 150-ish million people that are claiming an income, a $5 trillion tax. So 20% of all tax collections is what California would need just to fund this housing plan. Now, why I think that the real strategy is around stripping away property rights is because it's the clearest and easiest path to achieve this goal. And when you look at what California just announced last week, that they are no longer calling landlords, what they're going to be calling them is housing providers. What that really means is, no, you're no longer a lord over your land. You provide housing on the state's behalf. And we'll tell you what you can charge, can't charge, and what your rights are to operate this property. And what I think is going to happen is I believe many of these landlords are going to be leaving the business, and many are going to be signing master leases with the state of California, which they announced in October of last year. What a master lease would be is, look at this here, for example, beautiful property. Let's say that's a 20-unit apartment building, right? Rather than renting it individually, unit by unit, what they would then be doing is leasing the entire building to the city of Los Angeles. The city of LA would then place tenants. And some people would say, look, this is a great thing. They're going to place tenants, all of 100% occupancy, things will be great, and I'll just collect checks. It's like Section 8. Why wouldn't I do that? Well, the only problem would be is if the city of LA says, look, we have to cut funding, or you need to do this property upgrade, you need to comply with this, or we want to change rules inside of our agreement. Who are you going to sue? Who are you going to go after? The city of LA? You're going to go to Stanley Moss Courthouse in downtown LA and sue the city of LA? Wouldn't work, right? You become locked in indefinitely to the state. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. I believe the areas that were just impacted in LA, you're going to see tons and tons and tons of Section 8 apartment buildings popping up all over Sunset, Amalfi Drive, all these beautiful neighborhoods. You're going to start seeing a lot of these buildings pop up. They've reported that if you have a low-income tenant, you need to be able to provide proof that you've had this low-income tenant with their financial information. And if you don't have it, you would need to build an apartment building in its current place that does have affordable housing. So it's this major shift towards building affordable housing inside of those pockets, inside of those areas. So what I think is going to happen is I don't believe that we're going to see 2.5 million housing units being built. I don't. I do think we're going to see the city of LA, city of San Francisco, state of California moving forward and acquiring tons of master leases and properties at substantial discounts, and they're going to be buying it with taxpayer revenue. So they're going to continue to increase taxes and make things more challenging for the people that are creating economic output, using those funds to buy back their own property. Think about it like the mansion tax. If you sell a property in California, residential, commercial, $5 million or above in the city of LA, you pay 4% over 5 million and 5.5% over 10.5 million. They say this is to combat homelessness. So they're using this money to combat homelessness, meaning to empower organizations like BASTA, Public Counsel, and tenants' rights legal programs. So many of these landlords, people that are buying $5, $10 million, $20 million properties, these people, a lot of them, probably own rentals, right? So they're using their own money to then sue them, to pursue them for more of their own money. It's comical, right? But how I find this scenario so interesting is when you look at what's happening with these top real estate agents that are on television that are saying, oh, we need to stop price gouging. We need to go after these landlords that are taking advantage of tenants. What's fascinating is that they're playing both sides. They want the landlord and the property owner to give them their listing, whether it be for lease or sale. But then on the other side, they want to pretend like they're social justice warriors here to protect these tenants from being price gouged, right? They have a list of 2,000 property owners that are reporting to the state saying that these property owners are price gouging and taking advantage. So you think about this. The real estate agents are going after the property owners. The state's going after the property owners. There's this huge affordability crisis inside of California. Everyone is looking at people with property and income as you can solve the problem. They can't. There's not enough money in the pockets of people that have it to solve this problem, because the problem is going to continue to grow, and the demand and the need for social services will far exceed what anyone could afford to pay, right? People would just leave. They would just leave the state, and that's what I think is going to happen. More people are just going to get up and leave the state of California, and when there's nothing left to tax, then you'll start to see the true state of California. And I think that's what we're kind of walking into gradually and slowly. You're hearing a lot of people leaving California because they just don't know what's going to happen next. Imagine if you were a real estate investor thinking about buying multifamily property there. Even if someone said, hey, look, I can get you an 8% return on this apartment building. 3-4 years ago, you'd be lucky to get a 5% return. If they said, look, I can get you an 8% return, but if they sign up on this rent freeze for 1 year, they've already been going to court back and forth on this. If this gets signed off tomorrow, then you think about this. If rents froze and they can't increase rents and insurance is going up, let's say 20-30% next year, conservatively, and it continues to do that over the next 2-3 years, and landlord rights continue to get stripped away, is that 8% return really 8%? Or is it probably closer to 3 or 4% fixed over the coming 5 years, right? And then you look at where inflation really is, you'd be losing an arm and a leg buying rental property inside of LA. It's going to make less sense to invest there. It's going to make less sense to have a business there. It's a really sad situation, because personally, I love California. I think it's the most beautiful state in the entire country. It's like heaven on earth. If you've ever driven down Sunset through Brentwood and the Palisades, you make that right on Pacific Coast Highway, cruising up to Malibu, nothing like it. It's absolutely beautiful. But when you have these lawmakers destroying it It's a sad scenario, right? It's a really sad scenario. Look at Carlsbad, for example, Carlsbad, California. They just announced that, look, we got to combat homelessness. We got 100 homeless people, or 112, something like that. We need to allocate $9 million, which is $80,000 a year to every homeless person, right? $80,000 a year. Teachers are making $80,000, right? Nurses are making $80,000. Why be a nurse or a teacher when you could just be homeless, right? This is what's going to happen. It's going to be like the Section 8 program. Section 8, the more you make, the less the government pays. The less you make, the more the government says, look, you're economically disadvantaged, we're going to pay more. That's what's going to happen. It's a sad situation. It really is. And I hope that the landlords in California, they stand up for their property rights, or there won't be any longer. And the real estate agents that are telling on these property owners, my advice is to mind your business, focus on productivity, focus on creating value for yourself and your own family versus stealing from someone else's. And if you think that the tenant's paying too much, that's between the tenant and the landlord. They could find a different place to live. But going after somebody and telling on somebody else, I think it's a coward move. But yeah, it's a sad situation. It's a sad situation. The property owners, the investors, those are the people that are creating jobs, right? I think people forget that. Without business owners being rewarded for creating value in an economy, without that, they'll move. And then people won't have jobs. There won't be clean streets, safe neighborhoods, new textbooks. They won't have all these great benefits. You need to reward the people that are out there providing jobs, that are providing housing accommodations. You need to reward it, not penalize it. But I think the state of California is better rewarded by penalizing it, because the more that they penalize it, the more power that they obtain, and the more power they obtain, the more they can say, look, we need to do more for the tenants. We need to stand up for the tenants. But what they don't realize is the more power that the state obtains, the less power that the tenant actually has, the more dependent the tenant becomes on the state. And so ultimately, the wealthy end up losing, the tenant ends up losing, the state gets bigger, and that's how the show goes. So if you're an entrepreneur or business owner and you're in California, I think that there will be no better investment than a great attorney and a great accountant in the coming years. Probably worth their weight in gold if you're going to stay in California. If you're a tenant, I would suggest not fully relying on the state to save you, because when has that ever happened? It's never happened. They dangle the carrot, but it never actually happens over the long term. In the short term, you see some benefits. Over the long term, you lose everything. So being fully clear about your own goals and not expecting handouts from the state or from third parties, I think, is the clearest path forward. And I think we're going to see a lot of people leaving California 2025, 2026, 2027, and they're going to be continuing to relocate to other states, other countries. It's going to be, I think, a different world in California. I hope it changes. I hope a miracle happens, really. Because if it does, you'll see me buying a house there, that's for sure. I love California, but not under these conditions. I wouldn't, because you're just basically signing up to lose money, lose your rights, lose your freedom. I'm not interested. Look at this. All these properties, all these brand new houses. This wasn't a trend here 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's a trend now. You know why? Because the investors, the developers, they're betting on affordability, and they're betting that they're going to make more money here than they would in other locations in California and a lot of these other areas. This is what's happening. Money is flowing out of California, flowing out of a lot of other locations, and flowing into new locations. So let's have a conversation about this below. And if you'd like to fix your credit to position yourself, what I believe we're walking into is the greatest wealth building opportunity in American history. We'd love to help you at my company, GreatCreditFast.com. That's GreatCreditFast.com. If you have late payments, medical bills, charge-offs, foreclosures, bankruptcies, repossessions, or any negative or derogatory items in your credit report, go to GreatCreditFast.com. And if you have $100,000 or more thinking about investing into Section 8 real estate in Cleveland, Ohio, and buying incredible deals, go to SingleFamilyInvestors.com. Click the link in the description just below. I'll catch you next video.